just love. That's really all. That's all you have to do. You have to love in wisdom,
Mhm.
but you have to love. And I think the more we show love to the world, the more the world begins to recognize what true love is supposed to look like.
It's true.
And I think that's a very good thing.
Imagine having resources at your fingertips that support you through every step of your healing journey. That's exactly what you'll get with the You Are Not Your Trauma app. Access guided meditations that find your peace, read inspiring stories that resonate with your experiences, and join a community that truly understands. But that's not all. Dive into the Healing Chronicles and participate in community challenges. It's more than an app. It's a companion on your journey of self-discovery and healing. Download the You Are Not Your Trauma app today and join a community where your story matters and your healing journey is honored. Find us on the App Store and Google Play Store. Your journey to healing starts now.
Welcome to the You Are Not Your Trauma podcast, a show that reminds you that you are not alone, your experiences matter, and you are not defined by what you've been through. Each week, you will hear from the host and invited guests who have either personal or professional experience with trauma. They will share their stories and strategies for overcoming past wounds and beginning the journey toward healing and wholeness. Now, here's your host, a gifted speaker, author, coach, and entrepreneur, Harriet M. Harris.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of You Are Not Your Trauma, the podcast that brings hope, healing, and inspiration to those who have experienced life's most challenging moments. I'm your host, Harriet M. Harris, and I am so glad that you're here today. I hope that this show is an important part of your healing journey. The topic of today's episode is the art and challenge of trauma-informed support. And in this enlightening episode, we're exploring trauma-informed support, uncovering both its artful nuances and inherent challenges. We will explore the world of those who not only support trauma survivors, but also guide them towards transformative healing and resilience. We will also focus on how support, understanding, and practical tools can help turn trauma into triumph. Today's guest, Suzanne Burns, has been instrumental in this transformation for countless individuals. Suzanne is a speaker, author, podcast host, founder, and executive director of a thriving maternity home, and trainer to help organizations to understand and tackle trauma more effectively. Her contribution to the world of trauma-informed care is immeasurable, touching lives beyond the confines of her organization. Welcome to the show, Suzanne. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Harriet. I'm so glad to be here.
Wonderful. So let's get to it. Will you start by sharing with our audience a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, Foundation House Ministries is a maternity home. So our ministry is geared towards mothers in crisis, whether that's pregnant and homeless, coming out of jail or rehab. Sometimes they've also lost custody of older children. And so we also help as part of that reunification process where appropriate. So our mission really is to take these women when they're ready through a process of healing and restoration and really help them transform their lives into a place of sustainable stability. We try to be really careful to be partners on her journey rather than trying to take her along on our journey. So we learned that very early on in the life of the ministry. We've been open now just over 9 years, and we have housed over 120 moms, and we've served over 600 through our non-residential program as well.
Wow, that is amazing. So you
Thanks.
said 120 women housed and over 600 in your non-residential program. Can you just share
Yeah.
with us a little bit about the difference between the residential and the non-residential program?
Yeah. So one of the things, okay, so just backwards, super, super fast. When we opened, we started with just a very small office pod, and we had one woman who volunteered to let us place our clients in her basement apartment. So we could only house one woman, work with one woman at a time for like our first year and a half of existence. And once we got her to a place of stability and she's working and she's going to classes and the baby's in daycare, we're just kind of sitting around staring at each other like, okay, so what do we do now? What do we do with ourselves till she comes home from work? And that was really how it got started, was just seeing that that we have tools, that there are other people out there that could use them. And then one of my early staff came on, and she's still with me now. She actually lives on property with the clients. And she came from CASA, which stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates. And
Okay.
so her position had been such where she worked in the court system on the behalf of the children in situations where parents might be losing custody, or there was concerns. And so she had seen all of this situation going on where the parents needed help, but there really wasn't help for them. And she really couldn't do it herself because her mission was the protection of the child. And sometimes that creates it creates conflict when you're trying to help parents and the children. And so when she came on staff, she already had an existing circle of people that she knew needed help, but didn't necessarily need housing. And so that was really kind of where it started. And then throughout the years, we've just seen girls come through that, they were in stable relationship, maybe living with their grandma or living with a dad, but what they needed was the case management, the wraparound support services. We work with our local recovery court program. So as part of their ability to stay out of prison, they have to go through this outpatient program through the court system. And so we also partner with that and provide some of those classes too. So we've been able to really expand our support into a lot of other moms in the community that's far beyond the 6 beds that we actually have within the house.
Wow, that is pretty amazing. And I love how you just have all of these different people and organizations that are right there, kind of in-house or at least within your reach. And you've created a system that allows them to kind of go through and get what they need as they need it. So that is pretty amazing. So Suzanne, we are going to take a very quick commercial break because I know you have a lot of great things to share with our audience, and I am excited to have you do just that. So we will be right back.
Want a chance to win exclusive You Are Not Your Trauma merch? Here's how. Leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform and share your thoughts with us. It helps us reach more listeners who may also be seeking healing and growth. Once you left your feedback, visit feedback.youarenotyourtrauma.com to let us know you've entered by entering your info and the word feedback in the message section. You could be a lucky winner. Now stay tuned for today's inspiring episode, and thank you for being a part of the You Are Not Your Trauma community.
Okay, we are back. So Suzanne, your work involves the effective implementation of practical tools to serve the least of these. Could you give our listeners some insight into what these tools are and how they can be used most effectively in a trauma-informed context?
Yeah, so I think the number one most important tool that anybody needs in order to work effectively with those experiencing trauma is trust. And very close behind that is patience. And for us, one of the hardest things to build with our clients is that trust relationship. She for many of our clients, she has been in and out of foster care programs while she was growing up. We have girls who have been in active addiction for years, and so they're far more comfortable in the trap house lifestyle than they are in our home environment. And they already know coming into it that we're a faith-based organization, but but that doesn't they'll say anything to get into a nice warm bed. So once they're in, things tend to change. But in order for her to listen, in order for her to trust us enough to hear what we have to say, to allow her walls to come down, we've got to be trustworthy. And so when I say trust, it's my responsibility to be trustworthy. It is not her responsibility to trust me, right? Because that's not fair to her.
Right.
I have to earn her trust, and then I have to continue to earn it. And when she trusts me, then she'll listen. Then she'll tell me the truth. Then she'll tell me what really went on and what she's really carrying. And that's where true healing can take place. And I have to continue to be trustworthy through our whole relationship. Otherwise, I risk damage beyond repair. Not to say that people are human, and not to say that I can't make mistakes, and say that I'm going to show up and forget, or all sorts of things can happen. But I have to be honest and truthful, and continue to make an effort towards that trusting relationship. There's so many tools, and we use a lot of dialectical behavioral therapy working with the clients, and that really is a precursor towards what a lot of people use as cognitive behavioral therapy. But what we have found is that people who are experiencing trauma, who are in a high survival mode, their prefrontal cortex is not that's the front of your brain, for those of you that aren't maybe aren't as well versed in brain science as I am.
Right.
But that's where your logic and reasoning is housed, your critical thinking, your decision making, all those pieces. And so they really are acting in survival, even when they're in that safe environment of my residence. And so I have to take that into consideration, that it wasn't wise for her to trust quickly, to trust easily. And for her to stop and think about, oh, where do you want to be in 5 years? Or what would you like to go to college for? Or, if you could be anything you wanted to be, what would it be? Those have absolutely nothing to do with my survival right now. And so they're irrelevant, and they're frustrating. And so we don't use a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy until she's a lot farther along in the process. DBT is much more active based, and much more spur of the moment kind of thinking. And so those are the things that really seem to work most effectively. And it always has to be rooted in that trust relationship.
Wow, I love that, because what I'm hearing is compassion. What I'm hearing is understanding. What I'm hearing is that patience that you mentioned. And those are definitely things that are needed as someone is trying to figure out, someone on that side, because it's when you're going through, something traumatic, or even if you're not in the midst of it, but that's all your brain knows is that trauma. Like you mentioned, trusting someone is not easy, or looking towards your future. Like, your future is probably jumbled, in many cases. You can't see it for what it could be until you get to a certain point. So I really love that you mentioned that you all wait until she's ready. Wait until, instead of trying to push her into, you got to think like this, or, you got to think about this, your future is so important. While it is, that if I can't get her past this point, then I can't get her truly focused on that. So that is very, very good. I really like that.
Good. I'm glad.
I love learning about new things. So and different ways that people are
Mhm.
helping people who have experienced trauma. So this is very different, and I really like it.
Good. I'm glad. We've been accused of that before. We've had volunteers quit because we're not churchy enough. We've also had
Oh
volunteers quit
wow.
because we're too churchy. So we are definitely a unique kind of ministry.
Well, that
But you know, everything we've learned has been by accident and has been through doing it wrong. You know, and there's a great Maya Angelou quote that I love so much. It says, "We did what we knew. When we knew better, we did better."
yes,
So
yes.
that's really just what we try to do with every single one of these mamas that comes through is, you know, how can I love you better? How can I love you like nobody else has loved before? How can I love you in ways that you didn't know you needed to be loved? And then how can
Yes.
I teach you how to love others, starting with your children, but how can I teach you how to love others in the same way?
That is all beautiful. Also beautiful. I love it. Now, the realities of working with individuals who have experienced trauma can be
It's a dumpster
challenging.
fire every day.
Yeah, it can be challenging and I'm sure very complex. Can
Yep.
you share your insights on these realities and how your organization navigates them while ensuring compassionate and effective care?
Yeah. Okay. So um it still comes down to trust and patience,
Okay,
and paying attention. So I have so many stories, and I'm trying to like filter through my brain the right ones, the short ones.
sure.
Um, one of our early clients, probably we had just gotten our first house, so yeah, she was probably like client number like 10 or 11. You know, I mean, very early in the ministry. And one of our staff, who is no longer with us, we had gotten a scale donated. Why they donated a scale to a bunch of pregnant women, I do not know. But our staff person was like, "Oh, I was so excited when I was pregnant with my kids to to get on the scale and to see the number going up and just know that that little life was growing, and it was so exciting. Don't you want to come and try it?" And my sweet little client looked at her and said, you do know that I have an eating disorder, right? You do know that I was hospitalized, I was institutionalized, is what she actually said, for this eating disorder a couple of times. And I mean, my staff was absolutely devastated, and but that was a huge learning opportunity for all of us. That we really don't know what these women have gone through in their past. We only know what they tell us. And we also have learned in 9 years that they lie a lot. They tell us what they want us to know, which is not that they tell us untruthful things, but they only tell us the things they want us to know.
Right.
So it really does become peeling on an onion to understand the
And
bigger
some of that
picture.
is
Um,
likely from like this fear of being judged.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
know, and what's so funny is that you have the polarities. Like there are some who come in and it's like, you ain't gonna know nothing about me. I'm not gonna tell you nothing. I don't trust you. And then
Mm-hmm.
on the other end, you have people that are like, here is my open book. Come and dwell in in my cesspool with me. You know, let's just keep rehashing these traumas over and over and
Mm-hmm.
over again and never actually get out of the pit. And so it's so funny, but it both responses are rooted in the same thing. I don't trust
Mm-hmm.
you.
Right.
And so for those that overshare, it's if I just show everything now, then maybe I'll run you off now, and then I won't have to worry. I
Mm.
won't have to continue to worry about when you're going to leave me. If you just leave me right away,
Wow.
then that's easier. Whereas
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the exact same root reason that the girl says absolutely nothing. We had one client that stayed in her room for almost 3 full weeks before she finally started like coming out of her room just a little bit. And today she's working on her master's in social work and
Wow.
is on staff with one of the regional homeless coalitions in the next county over, and refers clients to us. So
Wow.
it's just about trusting, and for
Mm-hmm.
us, a lot of that trust is trusting the Holy Spirit to know when to
Right.
push and when not to push, when to listen, when to wait.
Mm.
And not everyone has access to that, or not everyone is interested in that level of spirituality, and I understand that, but that's our go-to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I like it. I like it. And I do like how you began by sharing just what kind of, I guess, kind of created this reality of, oh my gosh, I never thought about, what I said or how this would make them feel.
Yeah.
But from what you shared, it sounded like, the compassion was there, because once your employee found out that, realized what she was saying or how it was impacting this person, she felt bad about it. Not that it's good that she felt bad, but that she cared, because sometimes we can say
She was
something like,
aware.
oh,
Yeah.
how was I supposed to know? Like, I don't care,
Yeah.
but being on
Yeah.
that flip side to say, oh my gosh, I had no idea, I wasn't aware. Like, it mattered to her that she had said something that potentially, unintentionally was, triggering, or even offensive in that case. So great. So in your opinion, why do you think people often find it difficult to work with those who have experienced trauma? And then how can this be addressed to create a greater understanding of empathy?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So I think a lot of it is just being intimidated. So if your audience is familiar with the ACE score, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, this is a scale of 0 to 10 that, that helps you go through 10 typical childhood traumas. And so you get your score from 0 to 10. 0 being you had virtually no childhood traumas, and 10 being you lived through all of them.
Right.
So in the case of many volunteers, their compassionate heart is rooted in like an ACE score of 1 to 2. And for our clients, their ACE score is typically 7 to 9. And we do have a pretty healthy percentage that are 10s. So they truly do speak different languages. So because of the trauma they've experienced, and because of the life circumstances that they've been through, and so for many volunteers and many people who would like to, it's an intimidation. I haven't lived through this. I haven't ever done drugs, or I haven't done this or that, or I haven't ever been in jail. So how could I relate to somebody who's been in jail? When that actually isn't what matters.
Right.
It really is about how can you love this person well, unconditionally. And another piece of that is the giving, because many people in trauma are accustomed to manipulation, they're accustomed to taking, they're accustomed to survival. And so people want to give money, they want to buy lunch, but what they see as a sacrificial gift to this woman, she doesn't understand that, because she's never been in their shoes. She's used to dumpster diving. She's used to prostituting to get what she needs. She has no idea that you taking her out to lunch today was a sacrifice. So when you're supposed to meet next time, she's going to assume that we're going to lunch, and it's going to be someplace nice. It's not going to be McDonald's or Taco Bell, because the clients don't have a frame of reference for a middle class lifestyle either. So learning to speak the same language and setting those rules and boundaries in place that protects the volunteer but also protects the client are definitely paramount.
Learning to speak the same language, that is kind of what jumped out at me. And I think that is super powerful, because we're all human, we're all people. And sometimes we allow our circumstances or our roles and, where we are, what we've achieved, to kind of overpower the fact that we are just people. Honestly, we're just all God's children. And, if we can learn to speak the same language, learn to see each other as as just people, who need the same thing. I need the same love that, the person next to me needs. It may need to be in a different way, but we all, that's really truly what we all desire in some shape, form, or fashion in our lives. So I like that. I love that that you phrased it that way, that we need to learn to speak the same language. And of course, we're not talking about an actual verbal language. We're just talking about the language of love, loving people where they are, who they are, for who they are, like no strings attached.
Exactly. So. And that's so hard. It's so hard to do that in practically.
Oh, yes. Yes, it is.
I love, I love an analogy that I heard one time, talking about, in the bathtub, if you come in from outside and it's super, super cold and you get into, warm water, it can feel very painful at first, even though that's what you actually need. And even though it's not actually pain, it just feels that way as you begin to warm back up. And that, for a lot of our clients, is what our unconditional love actually feels like. Wow. Because at first they're angry. How you're a stranger. How could you possibly love me? You don't know anything about me. You don't know what I've done. And so then they start putting up those walls. But then as they see it lived out, now they become angry. Like, why doesn't my mom love me like this? Why are you the first person in my life? You, a strange person, you, somebody, a different race, a different ethnicity, a different gender. How can you love me unconditionally when my mama didn't, when my daddy didn't, when my grandfather was my abuser, when all of these things happened? How can you love me like this? Wow. And it's incredibly painful to continue to love her through that season, because that's usually the where she's acting out the most, where she's the angriest, and where we're hearing all the foul language, and and we're concerned whether or not she's going to pack her stuff up and leave, because we're a voluntary program, so she's not under lock and key here. But we just keep loving, and we just keep praying, and we just keep being patient and waiting for her to see the realities that that love has to be rooted in something bigger than yourself. Yes. And it's not necessarily that her mama didn't love her. It's that her mama didn't know how to love her, didn't know how to show her love. For many of our clients, this is generational. We have mamas who are addicts. We have grandmamas who are addicts. And so how could they love you, sweetheart, when they didn't know how to love themselves, and they didn't know the things that you're learning? And so we're stopping this in this generation. And when your child comes along, they're not ever going to know these things. They're not ever going to doubt that you love them. And then eventually, when she's ready, and if it's possible, then we can begin turning around and loving mom and loving grandma. And we have seen transformations come from those directions, as well as lives become stabilized and become transformed. But it's a long, slow, patient process.
Okay. Wow. I mean, so many points you hit on there. And I think the one that kind of hits so heavy, just because of a lot of the conversations I've had on this podcast, but also in conversations I've had with people, is that it is hard to understand that, sometimes the parent didn't know how to love you, and that, no fault of theirs, they did what they knew to at the time, but it kind of goes back to the quote you just mentioned, is that when we know better, we do better. So you are positioning these ladies to learn better than what they have already been taught, so that they can do better as they move into motherhood themselves. And I think that is very, very, very beautiful.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Harriet. Thank you.
No problem. So let's get back to your team. How do you educate and prepare your team, or, the other organizations that you train, to handle the emotional and mental challenges that sometimes come with, working with people with trauma.
Yeah, so we've developed a program called the Wisdom Method, and it pulls together understanding poverty mindset, understanding trauma and brain science, but also understanding addiction and mental health and how kind of all of those things work together in these women's lives, but through a biblical lens, because everything we do is through a biblical lens. And so for us, the ultimate wisdom for working with people in low socioeconomic status, working with people in high trauma, working with whoever it is that you're working with, counting the cost, I think, is the number one piece, and that really is kind of the root message of the Wisdom Method. It's understanding that you don't necessarily know all that you need to know to work with these clients wisely, and then you have to decide on a daily basis, is this mission still worth it? Is this particular client still worth the headache, the hassle, the noise, the smell, the expense, the time and effort? Is this person still worth it to me? Or is this beyond my ability to pay? Is this cost burden beyond my ability to pay? And when it comes down to it, I personally believe that if you make the decision that that she is worth it, or he is worth it, or this child is worth it, then you're done. That's it. We're just going to do what needs doing.
No, we just got to do the work.
Exactly. My growing up, my kids, once the decision is made, then there's no more waffling, no more discussing. We're in it. Let's just get this done. And I think that really is the root message to teams, is just to count the cost, and then to learn what you need to learn to be effective, to be equipped with the right tools to serve wisely. But still, in all, it is it's a decision that you have to make.
Okay. Well, when you so you make those decisions, they make the decisions, and they decide that this person is worth it, and they are doing the work. They're sticking with it. But what strategies do you emphasize to prevent burnout for those people, and so that they themselves can maintain a healthy and empathetic approach to care?
Oh yeah. So secondary trauma is huge. And I think one of the most important things that I learned was at first I was trying to avoid secondary trauma. I was trying to avoid it for my staff. I was trying to avoid it for myself. I was trying to teach others how to avoid it. And then one day it dawned on me, it's unavoidable. That's not the point anymore. So now it's about managing. How do we manage our secondary trauma? I cannot love this person wisely, pulling them out, that picture of pulling them out of the ocean and into the rescue boat. I cannot love them wisely if I don't have my feet first firmly grasped in the bottom of the boat, so I can't be pulled back out. But then I have to be strong enough to lift them out of the water and into the rescue. But then it's a matter of caring for their needs. They're wet and they're cold and they're hungry and they're frightened. And so first we begin to heal those things, deal with those issues. And then when they're stabilized, they begin to notice that, there are still others in the water that I could be rescuing. And so then they come alongside the side of the boat and they begin helping to rescue as well. So that's kind of my picture of what effective ministry looks like. And so dealing with the secondary trauma is really just about recognizing that, yep, it exists, sure enough. And beginning to make, first of all, to give yourself permission to feel that way. Second of all, to know yourself and how can you release this. Do you live in an area where you have access to, to a lake or to a a pretty creek, or what can you do to go and see something different for a little while, and kind of allow your soul to be restored, whether it's church services or music, or doing crafts and hobbies and things that take your mind away from it. That all helps to purge all of that. Talking with a therapist, or talking with a mentor or somebody to help you release all of those toxic chemicals are really helpful. But also just walking and doing yoga and doing those physical things that help to release the trauma that the body retains. The Body Keeps the Score is an excellent book on how trauma can be established in our bodies. And as a Christian, I recognize that we're body, soul, and spirit. So I recognize that we can carry trauma in each of those areas, and so we need to be addressing each of those areas to be able to release the trauma. And so for our staff, it really is no different than for our clients. We allow days off. We allow mental health days because we get it. We do activities outside often, weather permitting. And of course, right now we're heading into August in Tennessee, and it just weather ain't permitting right now. It just ain't.
Oh, trust me. I know.
Yeah, we enjoy the air conditioning much more than we enjoy the pretty sunshine. But it's doing those little things. Sometimes it's just coloring. Sometimes it's stopping at the gas station and picking up a candy bar or a soda that is your coworker's favorite, and just being a blessing to them in small practical ways, so that we understand that this is hard, but we're raising kids
but
together.
We got it.
We got it. It's important work, and we're in this together. And I think reminding ourselves that our staff and our volunteers are not secondary to the clients. They're all equally important. One may be more needy in the moment, but they're all important. It's like having 15 kids. You love them all. You may just not be talking to all of them at the moment.
Exactly. I like to tell my kids sometimes, they're like, Mom, who's your favorite? Whoever I'm speaking to at the time. Then they're like, Mom, like they want that. All want that same attention.
That's right.
But you opened up a question that I feel like I need to add in for our audience. You began talking about secondary trauma. Can you just give us a brief overview of what secondary trauma is for those who may not be familiar with that term?
Oh, yeah. So secondary trauma is what occurs when you are hearing about someone else's trauma, or observing it maybe on a TV, or things like that. We all were traumatized through COVID, whether we knew somebody who had COVID or whether we ourselves had it. We were traumatized by the news. We were traumatized by the news of the riots. We were traumatized collectively. We were traumatized by 9/11 and by natural disasters. All of that feeds to secondary trauma, but also it's hearing the coworker sharing about her abusive relationship. And you carry that with you. So it's important in the moment. It's really important to be that carrier of her burdens. That's part of what being in the helping profession is all about. But you cannot carry them away because they're not yours. And so we have to, as helpers, we have to be able to lay it down at some point. Not handing it back to her, but being able to lay it down and help her lay it down. I tend to speak in the her, because that's 95% of my clients.
Right.
But I don't mean to be disrespectful, because men carry trauma as well, and they carry it differently than women do. But that secondary trauma can be more damaging than than felt trauma, experienced trauma, because there is no outlet for it. And so, the body keeps the score is another great reference for this. But you see a lot of times you see people in the helping profession who are quite overweight, and sometimes it has to do some with hormones. It some has to do with age, has to do with a sedentary work lifestyle, but mostly I believe that it has to do with that carrying of secondary trauma. And I think that that's an important distinction for us, that we don't recognize how traumatized we actually are as we love, as we care for each other. I think we're beginning to recognize how COVID and the lockdowns and everything traumatized us collectively. But and we recognize it in the military and things like that, but we don't really recognize it with the people who work with the people who are traumatized, and we're carrying it also.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. I just wanted to make sure that as our listeners heard about that they understood what secondary trauma was. So again, thank you for sharing that. Now we are going to take another quick commercial break, and we will be right back.
We are on an incredible journey together, sharing stories of resilience, hope, and the power of healing. To extend the reach and impact of the You Are Not Your Trauma movement, we've launched the Give 5 to Change Lives campaign. With just $5, you can contribute to developing invaluable resources like our upcoming You Are Not Your Trauma app, healing journal, and expanded podcast content. Every dollar and every share contributes to helping bring healing and hope to more people. We invite you to join this movement. Visit giving.youarenotyourtrauma.com to contribute. Together, we can change lives one heart at a time.
Okay, we are back. Suzanne, I just want to say thank you so very much for sharing your wisdom and your experiences with us today. I truly believe that your insights have enriched an understanding of the intricate world of trauma work, because it is definitely something that isn't easy to do. I feel like you have explained and shared the wonderful work that your organization does. And I feel like it's your dedication to serving your clients is a testament to the power of empathy, of patience, and of resilience. So thank you for what you do.
Well, I appreciate that, Harriet. I think it's funny because I'm just little old me. I'm just trying to love these girls like they were my own kids. That's really all I'm doing. But I appreciate what you have to say. Thank you.
I think you are doing an amazing job. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah. Just love. Just love. That's really all. That's all you have to do. You have to love in wisdom, but you have to love. And I think the more we show love to the world, the more the world begins to recognize what true love is supposed to look like. And I think that's a very good thing.
That is true. And I completely agree with that. So again, thank you, Suzanne, for joining us. Thank you for sharing with us about the work that you're doing. It is my hope and prayer that you continue to touch the lives of many, many, many more people, because there are many, 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 many people out there that are needing what you have to offer. So again, I'm so glad you were able to join us. To all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode as much as I have. And as we bring this episode to a close, I would just like to share this thought. In the heart of service, we unlock the door to our own humanity. So let's remember that no one is defined by their trauma. And within the resilience of every survivor, we discover the real testament to the true strength of the human spirit. If you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to share it with someone who can benefit from the information shared. And I want you all to be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show. You can check out the website at www.youarenotyourtrauma.com to leave feedback, request to be a guest on the show, subscribe to the show, get information on our show guests, or to get information about advertising on You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. You can connect with You Are Not Your Trauma podcast on Facebook and Instagram at You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. And if you have a story to share, please email me at contact@harrietmharris.com. And please remember, you are not your trauma.